Welcome to the Trail Chasers podcast. I'm your host, Dean Horwitz, and I'm excited to share this journey with you. Each week, we'll be hitting the trails with some of South Africa's most inspiring trail runners, diving into the topics that matter most and uncovering the secrets of this incredible sport. Lace up your trail shoes and join me on this adventure. New episodes every week. Very excited to welcome you. So welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Absolute
I feel,
pleasure.
A bit of imposter syndrome sitting here.
No, not at all.
And it's also a good time to talk about communities because I feel like if you walk out your front door, you are run over by a community.
Exactly.
Like they're just popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
So definitely it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But a good time to talk about it.
Yeah. And tell me, who is Bryony?
Bryony.
There we go. So tell me, who is Bryony?
I'm someone who's not very articulate when I speak publicly.
Okay.
So I'm going to put that disclaimer out there.
Okay.
I'm a good writer.
Yeah.
And if this was a written interview, it would be fantastic and polished. So this could be waffly and diabolical, but let's go for it. I am, how would I explain? What would my bio be? I am first and foremost a mother.
Yeah.
Probably my proudest achievement to date. I am the founder of Chicks Who Trail, Chicks Who Hike, and Moms Who Hike. That Chicks Who Trail, I think, is 8 years old next year, in March. I used to work in media, so I come from a media background.
Writing, I assume.
Writing, journalism. Finished my career in print magazine as a editor in that kind of position. And then went into digital media and then actually went back to university and have become a registered counselor.
Oh, wow.
So I now work in a therapy space, or psychological therapy. But I do a bit of media. I do a bit of both. I'm kind of transitioning, and there's still a huge pull towards media.
Yeah.
I just think there was a burnout and the need to move into like a space of counseling comes from my roots in media. And I needed to find a way back to service where I was empowering and supporting and helping people.
Yeah.
And that is essentially, I'm like jumping into like question number 40, but like that's essentially the basis of Chicks Who Trail is it's like to create a space to empower women to do great things and to be the best version of themselves. Yeah. It's clearly a pattern in my life, pattern that, that's what drives me.
Amazing.
Yeah. It drives me because it is one of my 3 values, self-actualization, the concept of being the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
So if I can be in a position to help someone do that, or take a small step to realizing the best version of themselves, then I'm like, tick,
Amazing.
Ticks my box. Yeah.
I love that.
Mom to a little boy who I love dearly, founder of Chicks Who Trail, registered counselor, still got my foot in the media door, have a beautiful dog, so I'm a dog mom.
Amazing.
I'm one of those people that I've always believed in living a colorful life. So I try a bit of everything. I've dabbled in lots of different sports. I wouldn't say I'm only a trail runner.
Yeah.
Come from a surfing background.
Okay.
But that changed when I moved to Cape Town 13 years ago. So I don't surf as much, but I would love to reconnect. Outdoor person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that explain?
Yeah,
it's a very long bio.
Yeah, but I love it.
We segued hard.
It's a lot to start with. So we're good. We're good on the topics front, I think, for today's interview.
Articulation is not going to be the key phrase.
That was pretty good. That was pretty good. And tell me, what is the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you on a run?
I did actually read this question in preparation, and the immediate story that came to mind is like, I don't know if it's appropriate to share with a podcast. And then I couldn't think of a second most embarrassing thing. I will say this, and again, please edit this out if it is cringe, but for all the women listening, it might be like a relatable thing. My most embarrassing situation involved experimenting with what was called a moon cup.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Just in general. I was just because I'm like quite pro planet and and like, so I was like, okay, let's go with a moon cup. For audience who is listening and don't know what that is, it's a reusable device.
Yeah, I guess you would call it
that a woman can use during her period.
Yeah.
It's a menstrual cup. There we go. It's a menstrual cup.
There we go.
But I was experimenting with using them, and they're quite tricky to get used to.
Yeah.
And I was on a long trail run.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working out. And it involved, thankfully I was running with a girlfriend at the time. And she backed me hard, but it involved a lot of awkward moments along the trail, and then like a complete fail with people walking past and having to kind of, it was a disaster. One
and done.
It's done, but that's probably the most embarrassing, which is silly because like we shouldn't be embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
It's such a normal thing, but in society we are. But I can't think of anything else. Anything else terribly embarrassing in the trail space.
It's always so interesting, as you say, like about that. It shouldn't be an embarrassing thing. And even with like when people come on and it's like going to the bathroom on the trails is like an embarrassing thing, but it's like, you know, it's like, it shouldn't be
everyone
embarrassing.
Does it.
Like everyone does it, you know?
But I'm like, I feel like going red talking about it, and it really is silly. And it is a real issue. Women, especially if you're doing like longer trail runs, or I suppose road running too. Like, what do you do if you have your period? Like, you know,
exactly.
It's like you got to change.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway,
interesting.
Sorry.
No. That like
if I just lowered the standard straight away.
That's exactly why we're here. We had an whole episode on periods, so
okay, cool.
We're not. It's not taboo around here. Okay. And talk to me, I guess, about your trail running journey and how that kind of with intersection with Chicks Trail.
Okay, so I started dabbling in trail running when I was still in KZN. But I think I said to you just now, I came very much from a surfing alternative sports background.
Yeah.
So I wasn't in a space where I was doing sport for, I guess what trail running is. I don't know what trail running is.
Yeah.
I was just having fun. I used to surf a lot. I jogged to keep fit. Someone was like, try this trail running thing. I was like, yeah, cool, you know. But KZN, it's very like sugarcane fields, that kind of thing. Still remember that first trail run, and like I have a photo of what I wore, and it's just it's like the motivation of why I do absolute beginners workshops, because I was such a kook.
Yeah.
But from that kind of happened at the time I was the editor of a magazine, which is obviously since shut down, called Saltwater Girl.
Yes.
Saltwater Girl moved to Cape Town. It was part of Media 24. So with that move, the surfing almost hit like a brick wall, because I am terrified. It's completely irrational of sharks.
Yeah.
Never, no reason. I just, and at that time, sharks were like quite a thing in Cape Town. People, now they're all in J Bay, which is great. But I had also just started dating a guy who was massively into like super endurance sports.
Okay.
So he like, I think within 6 months of dating him, I like joined him for 80 Ks of a 100 miler that he was running.
Wow.
And I immediately got ITB and didn't run for a year.
Yeah.
But so that was literally the start. First trail run, then I ran 80 Ks, and then I got ITB for a year, and then slowly but surely started doing more trail. Saltwater Girl was shut down.
Yeah.
But Media 24 moved me on to Runner's World and bicycling. And I was kind of starting to dabble in trail running, and the editor, who's still the editor, Mike Finch, I think he allowed me to explore trail running from a Runner's World perspective.
Yeah.
And it really was a lovely time, because there were so many incredible events that I got to do through the magazine. I've traveled around South Africa running like some of the best events just to write stories about it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Which was incredible. And I like, as surfing kind of faded away, trail running became the main sport in my life, and mountain biking.
Yeah.
Because obviously I think I was like the deputy editor of bicycling. So like I had to throw myself into that. I have a very embarrassing story about that side of things. And then, it's become such a part of my lifestyle.
Yeah.
When I was when I've ever been injured or when I was pregnant or had a newborn, not being able to run really affected me mentally.
Yeah.
It's so much more than just being like fit or losing weight or whatever. It's such a being immersed in nature, focusing entirely on where your foot is going to go next, escaping from everything. It's such a like meditation and in motion type experience for me.
Yeah.
So it is a part of my life. What was the question?
So yeah,
trail running in my life.
Yeah, and your life. So,
and the intersection with Chixie Trail.
Yeah.
About, I don't know, 2017, I climbed Kilimanjaro. And I climbed as a talent, as in like someone was making ads for a tour company.
Wow, okay.
And a whole bunch of us were invited to be the talent. I'm using inverted commas for people not watching this because I'm no model at all. They wanted ordinary looking people.
Okay. Well, yeah. And that's a compliment or
here I am.
Yeah.
So off we went and climbed Kilimanjaro, but it brought together some interesting people from around the world. One South African woman, Sabrina Chesterman, and then 2 American women. And we just got talking on that hike. And the one girl was really good friends with Gina, and now I cannot think of her surname, who started trail. Well, now it's gone out of my head as well. The American version.
Of Chixie Trail.
Okay. Trail Chicks? Oh, I'm embarrassed that I actually can't remember it. But they're still going and they're massively successful, and I love that concept. And because there was like a link and we were talking about it, I was like, okay, maybe the time is now to start something. Tuesday Trails, I think, was the only community that existed. And I was also massively motivated by my time at Saltwater Girl, which was a teenage magazine for girls.
Yeah.
And seeing how women together can like achieve.
Yeah.
So that's where the woman kind of side came from. I can't believe I can't remember the name of this. Like I want to look it up.
You've got an hour to to think about it.
But yeah, she was actually incredibly helpful. I'll keep on hitting this.
No,
I emailed her back and forth. Like, how do I do it? You know what I do? Stu McConaughey was really helpful.
Yeah.
Because there's panic when, like, well, back then there was. Like, what if I started and no one comes?
Yeah.
But Stu actually said the best thing to me. He was like, if you do it for the right reasons,
exactly,
it will be sustainable and people will come because it's authentic.
Yeah.
And true to that, it's still going.
Yes.
Because it wasn't to make money, to be famous, to be cool or anything. It really was to, like, create a space where more women could experience what I had experienced.
Yeah.
And I mean, the sport has helped me to grow as a human.
Yeah.
So like, if I could.
And what was the kind of, I guess,
Trail Sisters. Yes.
That's a good one, actually.
Yeah.
That's a nice
Trail
name.
Sisters.
I think, I mean, that's interesting on the name. Like, talk to me about the name. How did that come about? And, you know, also now it's like we don't call women chicks. Like, you know, so like what was
and what do I do? Do I change it?
So back then it wasn't like a thing, you know, like, or was it a thing, but you were like shoving it in the face of the man type thing?
So no, it like Trail Sisters. And you know, when you're trying to like choose a name or something, then you get one thing stuck in your head and you can't like, and I love Trail Sisters, but it didn't seem representative of our South African.
Yeah.
No one here goes like, hey, sister. Like, not in my space.
Yeah.
Chixie Trail was, I think, almost just a WhatsApp group and it just never changed.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually like, okay, this is what we're going on. It was like the WhatsApp group was just called that and it just never changed from that because we couldn't think of something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, that's what it is.
Yeah. And talk to me, I guess, about the culture, you know, at the time and how that's kind of changed. You know, what was it like being a woman trail runner then that kind of inspired this whole thing, and how has that kind of evolved?
I mean, if I could even take it back like further, because being someone that surfed, and I'm gonna like, what's the word? Like, give insight to my age, which I'm not actually embarrassed about, but
show your age.
Show my age. Back when I started surfing, There were so few women doing it. I've done 2 stints at this magazine, Saltwater Girl, once in my early 20s, and then I came back and was editor towards the end of my 20s. And even to see the change in female representation in the surfing world from 2004 to 2010 was like amazing to see the shift. And I think similarly in trail running, it's, as far as I know, like a lot of events now almost have more women entering, you know, and that's just, I think I got that fact from an actual event organizer for one event, but I think it's like the general consensus. I don't think we are the reason. I think women are just doing, are finding it more normal to enter these things and do these sports. I think it's great. I mean, it's amazing.
And talk to me.
And brands are supporting that.
I think that's,
you know,
also,
brands are like starting to make clothing and shoes, well, not shoes so much, but like clothing for women. Like listening to the fact that there are women doing these things that don't want to run in like a men's fitted hydration pack. You know?
And I guess talk to me then about the kind of importance of having, you know, a space for only women, you know, in terms of Chicks Who Trail. Like, how important has that been?
I think it is important. And I mean, again, this is just my experience and my opinion. And a lot of it is based on time with this women's magazine where we were getting women to like learn how to surf, which is terribly unpleasant. It's like a lot of salt water, sand. You don't look pretty. It was quite deemed quite a masculine sport. But then you get a whole bunch of women in the same space surfing, and suddenly it's fun, and everyone's like supporting one another, and I loved seeing that. Similarly, I think trail running isn't graceful or beautiful according to society. Okay, I've lost my train of thought.
No. So talk to me, Chicks Who Trail, you know, and the importance of having like a woman-only space.
Oh,
you know,
so when we did the surfing things, and I hope this can be edited to make it smooth.
Yes, it will.
One of the biggest barriers to the sport was intimidation. So women and girls were too fearful to embarrass themselves. They weren't strong enough. Like those kind of general fears, barriers. It's very similar with trail running. So a lot of women won't join a group where there are men because they fear being embarrassed, they fear being too slow, they fear being left behind, they fear being left behind and being alone on the mountain. They fear getting lost and having to like feel stupid. So by having the woman's only space, I think helps to break down those barriers because there's no like intimidation is I would love to say I am inclusive within the trail running world. I do, and I want no one to feel unsafe, unpleasant, weird, embarrassed. And we try to portray that through our imagery, our runs, our briefings. We do struggle by being so inclusive that we get a lot of very slow people and walkers, which is becoming a problem because of the safety on the mountain. I don't like people being out alone. But we, at one point, that's where Chicks Who Hike kind of came about. We're like, oh, we can't accommodate walkers on a Thursday, but let's have a hiking group. So, you know, like it is, I think the fact that it's all women's helps to just take the intimidation factor away and more women feel safe to like join. And talk to me, I guess, a bit about that Chicks Who Hike, Moms Who Hike, you know, how did that kind of start? How has that evolved? You know, what is that? I think Chicks Who Hike was more just because I was doing it. And obviously hiking is great cross training and it was pre-baby and pre-COVID. So like, and pre-crime. Like it was a good time. I relocated to Greyton for 2 years during COVID times and then fell pregnant. So it's not as consistent, but it is still a brand, and it is still like something that it's kind of like morphing as my life morphs. I think there's room for it. And I mean, if I actually threw energy into it, I think we could do a lot more. I've spoken like very briefly to hiking guides to do just some paid hikes, more unusual kind of uncommon hikes. So it's like kind of on my mind, but it's like a lot. You know, I'm like a single mom hustling 2 jobs, like trying to manage life. So these things do have to fit in with my life, but I guess true to what I said in the beginning, like if the passion is there and the motivation is authentic, they will work. But in the same vein, I think it allows me the space to kind of let it ebb and flow as my life does too.
And talk to me, I guess, about that passion and the vision, you know, when you kind of started, how's that evolved personally, and as well as kind of the Chicks Who Trail brand. You know, do you still feel that your sort of founding vision is, you know, it's still there, it's still the same, or has that kind of evolved with the times, or with the, you know, as things kind of have changed? And I suppose also as more women get into the sport, you know, is it still kind of a place, a kind of first stepping stone for women?
I think it would be, I think growth is important in any thing. So I think if we were exactly the same as we were when we started, we might fall off the back of the wave, if I could say that. In this year specifically, I've had 2 younger, way cooler than me women take over our Thursday runs.
Wow. Okay.
And they are kind of putting out the messaging, doing the briefings. I mean, I'm still there in the background, like a creeper, but it's kind of me going like, my time as the face of this brand is maybe over, which is okay. I'll always be the founder, but to make sure we're keeping up, for want of a better like phrase, keeping up with the times. It's important to have fresh blood and fresh ideas. And these 2 girls, Jess and Sam Lawson, are doing that. They're unbelievable. And they're definitely like bringing in a new younger crowd, which is great, you know. I think. And there's still space for like the OGs and the, you know, the trucker cap wearing women, but there's space for newer women too. I think for some ladies it is still a stepping stone. But that's also again why I've like branched off and I'm doing the absolute beginners. Because that is very much a stepping stone. That's like it is absolute beginners coming in. And having that safe space for them to do that. And then hopefully feed them into like a Thursday group run.
So talk to me, I guess, about that, because I think that's a kind of discussion, you know, that needs to be had. And I think it's, as you said, there's so many community groups popping up now, and it's spoken about a lot, but no one's really kind of, you know, actually speaking about it in terms of, you know, that kind of level that people are running at, you know, and everyone now wants to trail run, but not everyone's on the same level. And some people, you know, get really frustrated with being on the bottom level, and some people get really frustrated with being on the top level. So how do you kind of manage that? You know, I know you have the different groups and things like that. And then obviously talk to me, I guess, about the, you know, the beginner, you know, the beginning workshop.
So that is, it has been and is the most difficult thing or challenge about Thursdays is, or any group run, is having pace groups to ensure that everyone gets what they want out of the run and no one gets left behind. And to try and include, you know, your racing snakes to the newest people on the trails. We have pace groups, we for many years had one of the pace groups, our most relaxed pace group was called Absolute Beginners or just Beginners. We did away with that and we have shufflers now. But in calling the group shufflers, I think a lot of people think it's a walking group. So we now have to be quite clear with our messaging, like no walkers. But then when we say that, people who walk up hills think that we're talking to them and then they don't want to join. You're like, no, but it's trail running. Like, we walk up hills. Like, it just means like don't start walking, you know. But it is really tricky. Absolute Beginners was because it was just like weekly messages, like going like, what's the pace of your slowest group? And it's people that don't know where to start and they don't have anywhere to start. So that's where the workshop was born out of. And again, I think I said at the beginning, like that memory of my first trail run and just like, it was diabolical. Like I was a kook. And I wish back then someone had a 3-hour workshop that could have given me a rundown on shoes, hydration, waterproof tips. Like just to take you from kook, like to like slightly less kook. And to give you like very basic skills, including like group etiquette and trail etiquette and safety etiquette, if I could say that. They've been really popular. We've had 2 and we've got a 3rd one in September, actually, which I haven't opened sales, but like just for this one that we just did, like 35 places went in a day. You know, and that just tells me that there are women still needing the platform. You know? And then the idea is that we have someone that can manage a really slow, relaxed pace group on Thursdays. So if you do the beginners workshop, you're added to that WhatsApp group. So pull in on a Thursday, be a part of the crowd, and your pace group will be this until you're ready to graduate. Because you obviously want people to move up.
And is that also woman focused? And so talk to me then, I guess.
Everything is woman focused. I've never actually thought about like a guy starting out and if it's the same thing, to be honest. It's interesting because obviously I'm fairly new to trail running. Like probably, you know, like I started probably taking it seriously last year. And it's kind of like I run with a lot of women just because that's kind of like beginners kind of level, you know. And I also I have the same thing where I don't feel comfortable running with men, like a lot of men, just because it's like very competitive and very like fast. And so it's like, it is quite an interesting thing where I guess I mean, maybe this is just for me, but like I just find myself being a lot more comfortable around kind of women in trail running because it's kind of like at that level. I don't want to say it's like slow and more chilled, but it's like. No, but I think women are also just supportive and they're like, it's like not a big stress to stop and wait or to take a photo or, you know, like it's way more experiential than like getting from A to B. And that is a competitive thing that men do tend to have. It's a very general statement. But I mean, would you go to a beginner's workshop?
I would, definitely. Yeah. I mean, look, obviously it's one thing where it's like a beginner's workshop for women, but men are invited, men can come too. Then it's like,
no, but I mean, like, if it was just a general, it's a beginner's workshop for trail runners.
I guess you are right that men kind of do, you know, it's like that whole thing of like, no, I must like figure it out. And it's not like, you know, but I think for me,
so sad.
I know. Like, I think for me, definitely, you know, like I wish that I had, you know, like that kind of, you know, thing in the beginning because like last year, for example, was my first full year of trail running and I totally learned trial by fire, like, you know, which has its place, but also it's like, I now, you know, like have all those kind of regrets and like things like that, where it's like, you know, because I didn't learn those kind of things and I didn't have that space, it's like, you know, it's like now I have like this whole year of like, I guess, PTSD type thing. And I mean, and then talk to me, you know, like, I guess, do people, you know, is it like you come to Chicksuit Trail and you kind of move up the groups and then it's kind of like you then enter the kind of broader trail community, or is it kind of like it kind of
Not
runs
really.
parallel?
It's, I think people find their groups and they're happy. There isn't this like need to like upgrade. And I even find, like sometimes someone who's really like a fast experienced runner, sometimes they're just having like a horrible Thursday, and they want to run a chilled run, and they'll run, down a group. It really, it's. I like the idea of graduating beginners to join like the main groups. But it's not really about like going up and then ejecting. I think a lot of women who start running with us tend to come every Thursday to feel, to belong, to feel a part of something.
And so talk to me about the Thursday runs, how did that start? Where did it start? Talk to me a bit about that beginning
it was
phase.
Like the world's most awkward experience, the first one. Put it on social media, and I think 3 people came. And we ran, and they were like, so how long has this been going? And I was like, it's the first one, But then I think the next week, like 14 people came. And then it goes through like ebbs and flows. Like winters, there's always a dip. And kudos to all the women who get out. I mean, this winter has been quite rainy in particular. And they're out there, headlights, headlamps, raincoats, off they go. But we sometimes, summers are always like busy. Start of a year is always busy. Then it dips, then picks up again. And now, like I said, there's like a new sort of surge of younger women that are starting to join, which is really exciting.
And how do you keep that kind of motivation to keep it kind of going?
I did have a break from it when I was in Greyton, and other women took over. So that was probably quite important. It's most weeks it's fine. There are some weeks where it's like, I actually want to stay at home in my pajamas. But you never regret a run. I know that's terribly cliched. And having the group almost forces me on those days when you don't want to do it to show up for someone else, if not yourself, for someone else.
And how do you kind of manage it when it gets, like those dips, and you kind of then have like, say, 5 people with all different paces, how do you kind of manage that kind of,
What do you mean?
Like in terms of, obviously you've got your different groups, but if you don't have as many people and they're all at different levels, how do you kind of then manage?
One of the beauties of Trixie Trail is that our Thursday runs are community run. We make no money off of them. We are supported by Jack Black Beer. So women who come and run with us get a group run and a beer. And I think that's pretty cool. But it also, because we're not charging like a membership or anything like that, it means we're allowed to, we're like a part of the group less than being like managing the group. So we're people too. And if it's a situation where only a handful of women arrive and we don't have group leaders, we just say that. We're like, guys, this is a situation. I'm sorry if you fast and you're going to have to wait more. And if you feel under pressure, we're going to try our best. Because ultimately that's all we can do. And I think in the almost 8 years of being Trixie Trail, I think we've had like 1 complaint. We try to be as real as our group members, our community members. And they understand. No one's like,
And talk to me, I guess, about do you do the same routes every week? How does that kind of organization of that kind of aspect work?
For the longest time, we rotated the same 5 routes, just like for like a good 4 or 5 years. That we changed a little bit. We change it now with the cableway.
Yes, of course.
So that forced us to change 2 of our routes, and it was like really like the dredges of winter. Numbers were low, and I think all of us were starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable, like doing Opel-Sculpt with like 10 people. So we have included a few new routes, which is actually just so refreshing. Nothing like extreme, but to have like missing link. We have shifted things around, but generally we rotate like around 5 or 6 routes.
And talk to me, I guess, about the community aspect versus the, I guess, education aspect, in terms of often you go to community runs and there isn't that kind of element of education or like empowerment or anything like that. It's kind of like, this is a run, we run, and then we kind of drink beer type thing. So, do you feel that Chicks Who Trail is different in that aspect, or would you say it's kind of similar? It's kind of just a run, and there's not really an educational element to it.
I think our Thursday runs are just a run.
Yeah.
It is like, come after work, get on the mountain, have a beer if that's your preference, and go home.
Yeah.
I think if you come to a workshop or a weekend away or something different, we did a series, like a cheese and wine night years ago. That's got like an education, like sort of side to it, but not Thursdays.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to run.
Exactly. Yeah. and do you find that women that come to the Chicks Who Trail, they are looking for that education? And I guess that's why the beginners workshop was started. Or do you think is there like that element of learning by? I
think that, like, in terms of education, like there's the community exists and we have a chat group that's for chatting where girls and women can ask each other questions like about shoes and hydration packs, and this time of year it's always headlamps.
Yeah, of course.
Which one should I buy? I think that exists for education. I think that women I think women feel empowered by education.
Yeah.
So I think that they're a great audience or market for workshops about gear and training and food. And any time I've ever done anything like that, it's been massively supported. And again, I've always kept it to women, but in those workshops or group situations, if it's just women, I find that the group interaction is way higher.
Yeah.
And there's no one's afraid to ask stupid questions or just questions in general. So there's a definite thirst for knowledge when it comes to trail running. I honestly think workshops are the way to go.
Yeah.
Just even when you were talking earlier, sure, you've done a year. You don't necessarily need a beginner's workshop. But like, what about like an intermediate workshop where you're like, okay, now I'm starting to do like, I've entered 3 50s, three ultras this year. I want to talk about nutrition. I want to understand strength training. Those things we don't cover as much.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much you can say about nutrition to someone who's running 10Ks.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're running an ultra, sure. So like, there's another workshop. So there's so much opportunity.
Yeah.
So little time.
Yeah, exactly. That's always finding the time. And, we've chatted a bit about the other events and things like that. Do you do other events? You've got the workshops. Do you do longer runs? What's the thinking around that?
We used to do a lot more of that. We used to do weekend, like group events, as in like you find a race, like the Whale of Trail.
Yeah.
And I'd create like a little package.
Okay.
And it's like $8,000 gets you your Whale Trail entry, accommodation, and a training program with, at that time, it was Meg McKenzie's The Run Project.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot more of those kinds of things. Obviously, just time hasn't been on my side.
Yeah.
But again, there's like so much space for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And how do you think that trail running kind of empowers women, and what role has Chicks Who Trail played in that kind of that movement?
If I would like to answer that question, I have to think about how it's like empowered me.
Yeah, that's a good.
So I guess trail running has, especially the longer stuff, has helped me realize the strength or the power of mind over matter.
Yes.
So where your body's finished and you have to use your mind to get you over the finish line. I come from an extremely privileged position where I pay money to do that.
Yeah.
To put myself through hell to test my limits, and I'm aware of that. But I guess that's probably the biggest thing, like is just learning and nurturing my mental strength. Again, specifically on the long ones, but when I say long run, coming back from pregnancy and childbirth, long run's 10Ks.
Yeah.
I did the wildfire, the volunteer.
Oh yes, the BWS,
I did the shorter one last year, which would have been like, I don't know, 8 months postpartum, and that was like I got to the top of Kloof Corner stairs and I was like, okay, need a pep talk.
Yeah.
But I think the furthest distance I've gone is 100, and it's the only 100 I've ever done, and it took me 29 hours.
Sure.
But that's a long time to not sleep, and I've done a few shorter adventure races where also 33 hours in, and you've got to kind of like, your body's no longer functioning. You've just got to like talk yourself to the end. So I think that's the biggest way it's empowered me. And then I've been so fortunate through Runner's World mostly, and my position in media, to travel a lot and see different parts of South Africa and a few other countries on foot, which is just like the most what's the word? The most gentle way to travel and to experience a place. You can really experience a culture, people, nature, animals, like when you are on foot. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like, you're not like bustling in there in like a big 4x4 and like destroying things and loud, and it's just
natural, I guess.
Organic.
Close to the ground as well. And I guess you pick up things that you would miss when you're kind of at a level, and as you say, like just like zooming past something. Absolutely.
I had an experience in my media days with the musician Xavier Rudd, and I asked him advice on being like more connected and being a better human being in general. Because like if there's anyone that's like living like a wholesome, organic, healthy, balanced life, it's that guy. And he was like, his advice would be to tell people we are not of the earth, we are on the earth. Oh no, wait, did I say that correctly? We're not on the earth, we are of the earth. That's it. So as in like, stop living on the planet, like live with it. And I think all my experience trail running and these unbelievable, because I mean trail runs are generally in epic destinations, you really get to feel that like concept of being a part of South Africa and a part of something greater than yourself, as opposed to being on it and just like traveling for travel's sakes.
I love that. And you saw, and we had Pete, Pistol Pete on here before, and the one advice he kind of was like, chat to someone who's a bit more experienced, as kind of an advice for like a beginner. So what role do you think, mentorship plays in that, in trail running? And I guess, how do you kind of foster that in Chicks Who Trail?
I think mentorship is huge. I mean, I think of all the people that I like asked advice. And again, through my job at Runner's World, I had almost instant access to unbelievable like race and event organizers who were so experienced, and these people became like a part of my life. So I had such a incredible pool to dip into. And at the start of every, new sort of longer distance, there's always that terror, the unknown, and there was always a race organizer or a person close by going like, or a professional athlete going like, you got this, whatever, and someone that I could ask questions. So I do think it's an important thing. Am I a mentor? I'm not sure. Like, that would have to be up to other people. But I absolutely am here to answer. Like, if anyone asks me questions, I will share my experience. I'm by no means a professional athlete. I'm not a front of pack runner. I'm very much a middle of the pack. But I've done enough to give, I think, valid information. And it's also like stuff I've learned from some pretty credible people. That you kind of learn, you try and you fail, and then you do, So mentorship, yes, it's important. I don't if that answers your question.
No, and talk to me, I guess, about the different groups and the group leaders. Do they foster that, or is it kind of just they know the routes and they can run and they kind of just lead it?
I think all the women who have ever like put on the group leader hat, and even like, we are all very much like on the same page. Even in the beginners workshops, if we do like 3 skill sets, so before each skill we stop and we chat.
Yeah.
And it's like if someone has something to bring to the conversation, like bring it. Like I'm not going to be too proud to like listen to your experience or your input. So I'm very much foster like interaction and creating a space for people to speak and be heard. Because I think we can all learn from each other.
Yeah.
And I think we can learn from different sports, because the beginners things bring women from different sports, like there's so much we can learn from each other. And I do think that all our group leaders foster that kind of thinking.
And, talk to me, I guess, what are the actual, nuts and bolts in terms of what challenges do women face, when it comes to trail running? I think, as you were saying, like, I also feel like even though I'm a beginner, I'm in a very privileged position in being a male, white male at least, in the trail running space, where I can learn these things and I can, fail and learn, So I think coming from that perspective, it's quite hard to understand, other than what we hear about, what are the kind of real challenges that women kind of face when, either trail running or wanting to get into trail running?
I think right now, and I speak specifically in Cape Town because that's where I'm from, it's difficult because crime isn't amazing, or should I say safety on the mountain. I know there was a huge spike in October, November, December, and I know the city and like multiple groups have worked really hard to control that. But I'm extremely sensitive to it because I was mugged. I was one of the people. So to me, that's like the biggest schlep if you're a woman trying to get into it, is that you kind of have to run in a group or with other people. So if you're new and you don't know your pace, how you're going to hold out on a 5, 10, 20K run, that just becomes tremendously like tricky to plan for. So like, I mean, if I think of when I started, my first few trail runs in Cape Town were with mates, and they're pretty like cutthroat. They're like, okay, we're running 25Ks. I keep up. This is the route. And at that time I could, but if I think of some of the people I've met in like the beginners workshops, there's no way that's a space for them. So like it's and I just, the easiest thing like with road running, for example, is if I want to learn how to road run or get better at it, I can go on the prom, run safely for 5, 10 Ks. I can run there. There's so many options. Whereas I don't know where that is right now in Cape Town. It might be different in different parts of the country. And then, I mean, I was very proud to do a solo run in and around Newlands Forest for the first time in 10 months since being mugged last weekend. So, like, I think there are places where you can be, but I just know that if something had happened, it would be like a matter of like, oh, what was she doing running alone?
Exactly.
And I don't know if men feel that as much.
No, definitely. I mean, I think it's definitely something we men take for granted, I get like incredibly like furious when I'm running in a group and like solo men run past me, because I'm like, you don't realize how lucky you are, because it's one of my favorite things to do, be alone on the mountain. So it makes me sound a little bit hermity, but like it is just bliss to be completely alone in nature. So to not be able to do that right now, for me, like, is really sad, but I think it is probably a reason a lot of women don't start. And I mean, and then talk to me, I guess, like safety in numbers. But then is it an aspect of safety with men in numbers, or do you think women safety, like Chicks with Trail, is it just the nature of safety in numbers?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It's been the hardest part of leading groups this year is trying to manage PTSD and real fear and kind of leading women and trying to, put on a mask and like, it's cool, it's brave. I'm like, it's fine. Because I'm like, is it fine? Nothing has happened. We've never even crossed paths with anyone would make us feel uncomfortable. So I don't know. I think safety in numbers. I don't think it matters if it's a group of women or what I think. Like, or men in there. But I like,
How do you kind of deal with those fears of the, people that like, I guess, come to you and it's like, I want to come run with you guys, but I'm scared.
Just like send them to talk to Jess or Sam. No, I'm joking. Actually, I'm not joking. I got a bit like over the top with like regrouping and making sure no one's left behind, especially in the dark.
Yeah.
Like it freaks me out. But thankfully, I have women like Sam and Jess and other women in the community that try to balance it out.
Yeah.
Like my massive fear because of what I went through.
Yeah.
So there are women kind of balancing out my like craziness.
Yeah.
Or like overbearing momness. Like trying to hustle everyone together.
Yeah. And I mean, talk to me, I guess, about the other issues other than safety, like we talked at the beginning of the, like with the periods and things like that, is that also a factor in sort of not getting into trail running or being nervous about trail running?
Possibly. Like I'm thinking of like things that women experience. Maybe not so much like a beginner.
Yeah.
But I'm speaking from like my point of view. I don't know what it's like for Muslim women.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like for Black women.
Yeah.
I'm like come from such a privileged place where I can afford like tampons. So running with a period is not like or the flipping lunar cup or whatever the thing was.
Moon cup.
And it's completely accepted in my culture to run when I have my period. Like it's not I don't know what it's like for other women, and it's a conversation, worth having.
Yeah.
Challenges? What was the question?
Yeah, other challenges other than safety.
And I guess the most common thing in the last 7.5 years is women who are moms trying to juggle, like, because obviously we run at like bath feeding time.
Yeah.
So that's probably a challenge that men might not have to.
Yeah.
Some men might not, or fathers, should I say, have to deal with.
Yeah.
But other than that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
And do you think the trail running community and races has become more inclusive?
I don't know how to answer that. I know there was like a big push, I think, with UTMB to like be more inclusive to women.
Yeah.
But it wasn't well received, if I remember correctly.
I suppose you try and force something. It's like it's always a tricky one.
And it almost felt like it was people trying to be more inclusive without taking like feedback from the people they're trying to include more. That was what it felt like when I thought about it. But I've never felt particularly excluded.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what it would take for me to feel more included.
Yeah.
But I also recognize like I'm a specific type of person.
Yeah.
I grew up in like a male-dominated sports world and have been in this space since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
So I feel comfortable, and I don't feel like I need any frills or fuss to feel included.
Yeah. And talk to me also, like, I guess, about, Chicks Who Trail. What is the kind of, the vision going forward? What do you kind of see as, are you happy kind of where it's at and you just want to kind of keep it up, or is there kind of a bigger kind of picture?
At one point, there was a picture to have many different sports.
Yeah.
So like, it's like branding for it all. Chicks who ride, chicks who surf, chicks who hike, which has kind of fallen by the wayside.
Why do you think that? Do you think it's not as much of an issue? You think it's a safety thing? Is it? It's
just a time thing.
Yeah.
Like I don't have, the time to throw into it all. I think the future, I don't actually know. We haven't actually kind of spoken about it.
Yeah.
I know Sam and Jess want to meet to chat about new ideas and moving forwards.
Yeah.
And I'm so open to hearing what they have to say.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I said, it's like accepting that I'm no longer the face of the brand, but the founder, but trying to use what I know to bring different elements to the brand, like so like the workshops. That is now becoming a happier space for me, rather than the Thursday group runs. So like if I can do workshops, chats, movie screenings, that kind of thing, where I'm just bringing a different dynamic and a different offering that grows the brand, and gives women like a more of an experience, like that excites me.
Yeah.
And I'm slowly starting to get a little bit of capacity to do that.
Yeah. That's amazing that like you've, I guess, refound the passion in, you know, like what it was and what it's kind of become. And talk to me, are there any particular, you know, stories of women who have come, I guess, to beginners workshops or come to Chicks Who Trail and kind of then gone on to, you know, become professional trail runners or anything? Do you have any of those off the top of your head?
We don't really have that.
Is there like a face of Chicks Who Trail
no,
that's like, you know?
The mascot of Chicks Who Trail is definitely my dog Kaya. She came to the first one and is still coming.
Okay.
No, we don't have any like people who have come in and we've discovered them, if you could say that. It's more like stories of people overcoming grief or mental illness or burnout or fear, you know, overcoming like this tremendous fear of doing something new and then experiencing it and just like going like, oh my gosh, I can do this. It's more those kinds of stories that we kind of have and share. Yeah,
those are amazing, those stories as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, leaning into that, like how important has social media been, you know, in the growth or in the, you know, I think for me, the biggest thing in social media is that, you know, we can now see other people doing it much easier than we could before. You know, and we can see that it's not as scary. You know, if you think about going into the mountains, it's a pretty scary idea. But I think for me, social media has kind of opened that thing where it's not that scary, or, you know, you can do these kind of things. So what role has that kind of played in and talking also about the WhatsApp group, you know, has that always been a thing? How has that kind of transformed things?
I like that idea where you say like social media has help to break that like intimidation fear barrier a little bit. I've never thought of it like that. Our social media is like we use it to say where we're running and we post a picture after every run. That's our strategy. It's like really amazing. But
groundbreaking.
It's groundbreaking indeed. Our photos are all authentically us and we are real, and I think if you scrolled through all our pictures, you would see that we in the same vein of what you were saying, we try to showcase that it is actually fun and ridiculous and okay, and you can be anyone and kind of be doing this. The WhatsApp group, we have two WhatsApp groups because we have a lot of people on them, and they are started as chat groups, and then now they're just one-way communication.
Okay,
and then we do have a chat group, which women can join knowing it's a chat group.
It's interesting how that's evolved. Like, I think that's also been like it's been like a this year or like a last year kind of development where now people are starting two types of groups, because obviously those announcements do kind of get lost otherwise. And,
and it's hard to police WhatsApp groups. Like it's all of the Chicks Who Trail stuff is volunteer. Like no one's making cash. So like everyone has got jobs, lives, and so to constantly be like, please don't advertise. Please don't share your friend's flat that's going for rent or whatever. You know, like it's difficult. We actually WhatsApp has been our main way we communicate. It's the safest way, I guess. I mean, anyone can join the group. So there's, you know, and we do every now and again have, whether it's people or bots, like we went through a phase of getting like a lot of terrible like porn.
Oh yes,
and then you have to like reset the link, and it's like less. We don't really. Again, it's just linked with safety on the mountain. We don't really share on Facebook anymore where we're running, and we use Instagram.
And talk to me about advice. You know, what advice would you give to someone wanting to start trail running but kind of a bit nervous to take that leap? Join a Thursday group.
I think, I mean, if you're absolute beginner or terrified, I would say message, because someone on our platform will reply, and let you know, like, or help you gauge if you are ready to start a Thursday run with us, or if a beginner's workshop is more where you should start. And again, maybe that kind of answers or goes back to like your question on education. Like we do Sam and Jess are really good at it now, and I try and tap in when I can, and Kerry's on Instagram too. But if people are asking questions, we're trying to answer.
Yeah.
So what would I tell people wanting to start?
What did you tell yourself when you first started?
I did it with a friend.
Yeah.
I did. I convinced my partner in crime at the time, who was also and is still a formidable surfer. I was like, come and do this thing. Come and do this trail run. And it was hysterical.
Yeah.
And I think, to have another cliched quote but it's something that I've that rattles around my head and has since I watched and read the book, watched a movie, read the book, Into the Wild, that Chris McCandless quote that is, happiness is only real when it's shared. And like I said, I love running on my own, but there's something that comes out of doing something scary with a mate, because if you're on your own, it's scary. If you're with a mate, it's hysterical. Yeah. And you're never scared alone. And if you are, you're never scared when you're with someone else. And if you are, you can hug each other or whatever, you know. Yeah. So that would probably be my advice, is find someone to do it with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting because you are always kind of looking for that one piece of advice, but there isn't really a one piece of advice. And as you say, find someone to do it with or join a group, because there's going to be a lot of advice that you're going to need to learn, you know, that's going to go beyond. So that kind of is a piece of advice that opens the, you know, to more advice.
If I cast my mind back to that first trail run, it was so mind blowing. Yeah. I came from never doing something like that. I've done a few doozies in my younger days, and that's probably the closest to trail running I've been. You know, running through the valley, but you've got a boat on your shoulder. And then doing this thing, I just remember thinking, is this safe? Is this safe? Yeah. And we laughed and we swam across a river, and it was just a mess. But it was so much more fun with that woman by my side.
What are the kind of goals for yourself, over the next 6 months, year, bucket list, those type of things? You know?
My bucket list has always been 100-miler. I think trail running is like tattoos. Yeah. You get one tattoo, you get 1,000. Yeah. And I think with trail running, you start with a 10K. Yeah. And suddenly you must run 100-miler. Yeah. It's not, I'm very focused on being a mom. So the races I'm entering are fitting into the time I have to train right now. I think now for me to make sure that trail running is consistent as much as I can is, it's just keeping me balanced, it's keeping me stable, it's setting an example for my son.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much. This was incredible. Feeling fired up after this incredible episode? Dive deeper into the world of trail running by exploring our other episodes, available wherever you get your podcasts. We're eagerly awaiting your feedback as well, so connect with us on Instagram @TrailChasersPod. Don't hold back. Comment, message, and share your thoughts. Until next week, keep chasing those trails.